In a small town surrounded by lush green fields, a little girl named Emma lived with her family in a cozy cottage. Emma, only 6 years old, was a curious and adventurous soul, but she often felt lonely because she had no siblings to play with. Her parents were busy working on their farm, and Emma would spend her afternoons exploring the woods near their home. One sunny afternoon, while wandering through the trees, Emma stumbled upon a small, scruffy dog hiding behind a bush. The dog was shivering, with matted fur and a sad, hungry look in its eyes. Emma's heart melted. She kneeled down slowly, offering the dog her hand. "Hey there," she whispered softly. "Are you lost?" The dog didn't move but gazed at her with wary eyes. Emma, feeling a rush of sympathy, gently stroked the dog's head. To her surprise, the dog didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned into her touch as if it had been waiting for her all along. Emma's face brightened as she softly spoke. "Don't worry, little one, I'll take care of you." Emma carefully scooped the little dog into her arms, cradling it gently. It was trembling, but Emma whispered soft words of comfort. Trying to soothe it, she slowly walked back to the cottage. The dog snuggled close to her chest, feeling safe for the first time in what seemed like forever. When they reached the house, Emma's parents were busy in the garden, unaware of the new little companion she had found. "Mom, Dad," Emma called out, running towards them. Her parents looked up in surprise as she approached, holding the dog close. "What do you have there, Emma?" her mother asked with a smile, wiping her hands on her apron. "I found this dog in the woods. He's all alone, and I think he needs a home," Emma said, her voice full of hope. Her parents exchanged a glance, and her father nodded. "Well, it looks like you've made a new friend. Emma, let's get him cleaned up and see if he's okay." That night, after giving the dog a warm bath and some food, Emma lay in bed, feeling a sense of peace. The little dog was curled up at the foot of her bed, resting soundly. Emma smiled and whispered to the dog, "You're not alone anymore. We'll be together forever." Days passed, and Emma and the dog, whom she had named Buddy, became inseparable. They spent every day together, playing in the fields, exploring the woods, and enjoying each other's company. Buddy had finally found a place where he was loved and cared for. And Emma had found a friend who understood her better than anyone else. One cold autumn evening, as Emma was walking Buddy along the path by the creek, she noticed something strange. Buddy, usually so energetic and full of life, suddenly stopped and stood perfectly still, his ears perked and his eyes scanning the surroundings. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She knelt down beside Buddy, sensing that something wasn't right. "What's wrong, Buddy?" she whispered softly. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the bushes. Emma froze, and Buddy's growl rumbled in his chest. Before she could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, and he was moving slowly toward them. Emma's heart raced with fear, but before she could even think of running, Buddy leapt in front of her, standing guard with his body tense and his eyes locked on the man. The man stopped in his tracks, eyes wide with surprise. "I'm not here to hurt you," the man said in a gruff voice. "But you should be careful. Not all people in these woods are friendly." Emma didn't trust the man, but Buddy didn't flinch. He stayed in his protective stance, and Emma knew without a doubt that Buddy would never let anything happen to her. The man, sensing that Buddy wasn't going to back down, took a step back, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I'm not dangerous," he said softly, his voice more calm now. "I just wanted to warn you. The woods aren't safe at night, especially for someone so young." Emma didn't lower her guard, but she noticed that Buddy seemed to relax, though his eyes never left the man. She felt a strange mixture of fear and curiosity, but she couldn't deny that Buddy's calm demeanor made her feel safe. "Why are you out here?" Emma asked, her voice shaky but firm. The man hesitated, then sighed. "I'm just passing through. I've been on the run for a while, from some bad people," he explained. He looked down at Buddy, still standing between him and Emma, and a small, sad smile tugged at his lips. "Looks like he's your protector." "I can see why." Emma didn't trust him, but she was torn. The man didn't seem like a threat, but the woods were dangerous, and Buddy's instinct told her to stay cautious. She stood up slowly, still clutching Buddy's leash tightly. "Thank you for the warning," Emma said, her voice steady now. "But we should go." The man nodded, taking another step back. "Be careful," he warned again, and then, without another word, he disappeared into the shadows of the trees. Emma and Buddy watched him go before continuing their walk home, the weight of the encounter still hanging in the air. Buddy kept close to her side, his presence a reassuring comfort as they made their way back to the cottage. Though Emma couldn't shake the uneasy feeling the encounter had left her with. She knew that as long as Buddy was by her side, she would always be safe. As they walked home, the evening air grew colder, and Emma's thoughts raced. What had the man been running from? And why had he seemed so sad? Despite Buddy's protective stance, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the man's story than he had shared. But one thing was for certain, Buddy had been there, right in front of her, guarding her with every ounce of his being. That night, as Emma lay in bed, Buddy curled up beside her. The events of the day weighed heavily on her heart. She knew that the world wasn't always kind, but with Buddy by her side, she didn't feel so alone anymore. Buddy was more than just a dog, he was her friend, her protector, and someone who had given her a sense of safety she never knew she needed. The next morning, as the sun rose, Emma and Buddy took their usual walk down the path by the creek. This time, Emma felt different. The encounter with the man had made her realize how much she depended on Buddy's presence. How much she trusted him. No longer did she feel the weight of fear when they walked through the woods together. With Buddy by her side, everything seemed possible. One day, as Emma and Buddy explored deeper into the woods than they had ever ventured before, they came across a small abandoned cabin. Emma hesitated for a moment, but Buddy, always the brave one, approached the cabin first, his ears perked and his body poised, as if scanning for any sign of danger. Emma smiled to herself, feeling a sense of gratitude for the dog who had become her companion on all her adventures. Emma and Buddy cautiously approached the small, abandoned cabin in the woods. The door creaked as Emma gently pushed it open, the hinges protesting the movement. Inside, the cabin was dark, with only the faint light filtering through the cracks in the walls. Dust hung in the air, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. Emma felt a chill crawl up her spine, but Buddy stayed close, his presence comforting. As they explored the dusty room, Emma's eyes caught a glimpse of something shiny on the floor. It was a small, silver whistle. She picked it up, examining it closely. It had strange markings on it, but before she could investigate further, she heard a noise outside, the sound of footsteps crunching on the leaves. Buddy immediately went on high alert, growling low. Emma's heart raced as she glanced out the window and saw a man standing at the edge of the clearing. He was tall, with dark hair, wearing a long coat that fluttered slightly in the wind. He was looking directly at them. Without a word, the man took a step forward, and Buddy stepped in front of Emma, his growl growing louder. Emma felt a rush of fear, but she stayed calm, holding the whistle tightly in her hand. The man paused, his eyes locking onto the whistle. Then, as if sensing Buddy's protective stance, the man took another step back. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. He simply turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. Emma stood frozen for a moment, her breath caught in her throat. She looked down at Buddy, who was still alert, watching the direction the man had gone. Emma's mind raced. Who was he? And why had he been interested in the whistle? Emma and Buddy stayed in the cabin for a few more minutes, the atmosphere heavy with the mystery of the encounter. Emma kept the whistle tightly in her hand, unsure of what to do with it. The strange man's warning echoed in her mind, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the whole situation. She looked at Buddy, who had calmed down but was still keeping a watchful eye on the path the man had taken. "Let's head home, Buddy," Emma said softly. Buddy wagged his tail in agreement and followed her as she carefully made her way out of the cabin. As they walked back along the trail toward the cottage, Emma couldn't help but glance over her shoulder from time to time, still feeling uneasy. When they finally reached home, Emma hurried inside, closing the door behind her. She found her parents in the kitchen, preparing dinner, and tried to act normal. Though the weight of what had happened lingered in her mind, she quietly placed the whistle on the table, unsure whether she should tell her parents about the strange encounter. That night, as Emma lay in bed, Buddy curled up at her feet. She stared at the ceiling, replaying everything in her head. Who was the man? Why did he seem to recognize the whistle? And why had he left so quickly? The questions swirled around in her mind, but one thing was certain: Buddy had been there to protect her. and that gave her a sense of security she couldn't explain. The following morning, Emma woke up to the sound of Buddy's soft barking. It was still early, and the sun had barely risen. She rubbed her eyes and stretched, then looked down to find Buddy sitting at the foot of her bed, staring at her with alert, focused eyes. "What is it, Buddy?" she murmured, rubbing his ears. Buddy whined and wagged his tail, then trotted to the door, pausing to look back at her. Emma furrowed her brow. Something was different today. She could feel the tension in the air, something unsettled. She quickly dressed and followed Buddy as he led her outside. As they walked toward the woods, Emma felt a strange sense of déjà vu, the same unease creeping up her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man from the day before was still nearby. Buddy kept his pace steady, but every now and then, he would glance over his shoulder, as though he, too, felt the weight of something lurking in the trees. They reached the clearing near the cabin. As Emma stepped forward, she froze. There, in the middle of the clearing, was a man standing by a tree, watching her intently. It was the same man from yesterday. "Buddy, stay close," Emma whispered. She could feel her heart racing, and she instinctively reached for the whistle in her pocket. Buddy stood beside her, his growl low but fierce, just as it had been before. The man, seeing Buddy's protective stance, raised his hands slowly, a gesture of peace. "I didn't mean to scare you," the man said quietly. "I need to talk to you. It's important." Emma's instincts screamed at her to run, but she couldn't leave Buddy alone. With a deep breath, she stepped forward cautiously. "What do you want?" Emma asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. The man seemed to hesitate, his eyes flickering with something Emma couldn't quite read. For a moment, the silence between them stretched. Buddy's low growl persisted, a constant reminder that Emma wasn't alone. "I'm not here to hurt you or Buddy," the man said slowly, his voice soft but urgent. "I know about the whistle." Emma's grip on the whistle tightened instinctively, her mind racing. How did he know? He continued, sensing her suspicion. "That whistle belongs to a group. A secret organization. It's used for protection, but also for calling others when they need help. It's why I came here," he added, his gaze never leaving her face. "I need your help to stop something big from happening." Emma glanced at Buddy, whose alert posture hadn't softened. She wasn't sure if she could trust this man, but the mention of the whistle, the strange connection between him and the whistle, and the growing sense of urgency in his voice made her feel like she had no choice but to listen. "What do you want me to do?" she asked cautiously, still holding Buddy's leash tightly. The man's expression softened slightly, and he took a step closer. "I need to show you something. It's the only way you'll understand," he said quietly, glancing at the woods behind him. "But you have to promise me. You won't tell anyone about this." Emma's instincts screamed to back away, but Buddy's gentle nudge against her leg gave her the courage to stay put. "Okay," she said, though the knot in her stomach grew tighter. "I'll go with you, but you're telling me everything." The man nodded, his eyes relieved for a moment. He turned and motioned for Emma to follow him into the woods. Buddy stayed close, his sharp eyes never leaving the man. Emma could feel her heart racing, but she trusted Buddy. If Buddy thought this man was a threat, he would have acted by now. They walked for several minutes, the forest growing denser around them. The man led Emma down a narrow path, and she noticed that he seemed to know exactly where he was going. They arrived at a small, hidden clearing, surrounded by thick trees. In the center of the clearing was a large rock, and the man pointed to it. "This is where we meet," he said, his voice steady. "This rock is a marker for the group. It's a place for those who are part of it to come for help or to give information. But lately, things have been getting out of control. Someone is using the whistle to call for help, but they're not who they say they are." Emma stepped closer, curiosity overriding her fear. "Who's using the whistle?" The man looked around carefully before speaking. "It's someone close to you. Someone in this town. I can't tell you everything yet, but I can show you the truth. That's why I need your help." Emma's mind raced. Someone she knew? She could feel the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. She looked down at Buddy, who was still on high alert, and nodded. "I'm listening." The man took a deep breath and looked around one more time to make sure they were alone. He gestured for Emma to sit on the rock, and she hesitated for a moment before sitting down. Buddy immediately settling beside her, his eyes still on the man. "It's your father," the man said softly, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was about to say. Emma froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "The whistle," the man continued. "It's tied to a secret group that your father used to be a part of. He was one of the leaders. But something went wrong. Someone inside the group betrayed him. And now they're using the whistle to manipulate people in the town, making them think they're in danger and need help. Your father tried to leave it behind when he started the police force. But his past is catching up with him." Emma felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Her mind raced to process the information. Her father? The man she had always trusted. The one who protected her from everything. He was involved in something secret? Something dangerous? Buddy, sensing her distress, nuzzled her hand reassuringly. Emma's hands shook as she gripped the whistle tightly, her mind spinning with questions. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma finally asked, her voice quiet but firm. "What do you want me to do with this information?" The man hesitated before speaking again. "I'm telling you because it's your choice now. You have to decide if you want to help stop this. The group is growing stronger. And your father's life, as well as the lives of others in this town, could be at risk if this isn't stopped." Emma looked at the whistle in her hand. Everything she had known about her father, about their family, was being questioned, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't let anything happen to him. "I'll help," Emma said, her voice steady with newfound resolve. "But we have to be careful. I can't do this alone." The man looked at Emma with a mixture of admiration and caution. He seemed to know the gravity of what they were about to do. "We'll need to act fast," he said, his voice low. "The longer we wait, the harder it will be to stop them. They're moving quickly, and they know exactly who to target." Emma nodded, her heart racing, but she was resolute. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing: she couldn't sit back and do nothing while her father's life was at stake. Buddy's ears perked up as he watched the man, sensing the urgency in the air. Emma took a deep breath. "What's the plan?" she asked, looking at the man with determination. The man sighed, his expression hardening. "I'll need to gather information on the group's next move. There's someone inside the group who can help, someone who owes your father a favor." He paused, clearly weighing his next words carefully. "But we'll have to meet them in secret, away from anyone who might be watching. This can't be traced back to you or your father." Emma felt a sense of unease, but at the same time, she knew there was no other choice. She trusted Buddy to protect her, and she had to trust the man in front of her. "Let's do it," she said firmly, "but we need to be careful." The man smiled faintly, relieved by her determination. "We'll be careful, stick close, and don't tell anyone else about this. Not even your parents. The fewer people who know, the safer we'll all be." Buddy growled softly, as if in agreement, and Emma gave the man a sharp nod. She was ready to take action. They couldn't let her father's past haunt them any longer. The man looked at Emma, his eyes filled with urgency. "Sheriff Hargrave is the one using the whistle to manipulate people in this town. He's the one behind it all. Your father didn't know the extent of the corruption when he first joined. He tried to walk away from it, but the damage was done. The whistle's their tool to keep control. And your father became a target when he started to question them." Emma felt the words hit her like a punch. Her father, the one person she trusted, had been involved with them all along. But she had to think clearly. If Hargrave was the enemy, then she couldn't hesitate. The stakes were too high. "Where is he now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind in her chest. The man took a deep breath, his gaze turning serious. "I don't know, but he'll be at the station tonight. They're planning something big, something that could ruin everything your father's worked for." Emma's mind raced. She didn't have time to waste. "We need to go now," she said, turning towards the path leading back to the village. "Buddy, let's go." Emma's heart pounded as she tried to process the man's words. The world around her blurred, the weight of his revelation sinking in. Her father, the one person she trusted above all else, had been involved with Sheriff Hargrave? Her mind couldn't make sense of it. She shook her head, trying to clear the confusion. "You're lying," she whispered, but even as she said it, doubt began to creep in. The man's cold expression told her otherwise. "I'm not lying, Emma," he replied, his voice low. "I'm trying to help you. But you need to understand the truth. Hargrave has been manipulating your father, and he's using you now to finish what he started." Emma took a step back, her hands trembling. "But why me?" she asked. her voice barely audible. "What do I have to do with any of this?" "You're the key," the man said, his gaze sharpening. "Your father never told you. But you have a special role to play in this. They need you to get to him. To bring him back to their side." Before Emma could respond, the man lunged forward, grabbing her wrist tightly. Buddy barked furiously, trying to pull away, but the man kicked him hard, sending him stumbling back. Emma gasped as the man's grip tightened. "Let go of me," she screamed, struggling to free herself. The man didn't flinch. "You're coming with me, whether you like it or not." But Emma fought back with everything she had. She twisted out of his grasp, her heart racing as she made a run for it. Buddy right behind her. She didn't look back. She had to warn her father. No matter what. Emma's legs burned as she sprinted through the forest. Buddy close behind her, his paws pounding against the earth. The adrenaline coursing through her body pushed her forward. But her mind was racing just as fast, filled with questions. How could her father be involved with someone like Hargrave? What did it all mean for them? She had to get to him. She had to warn him before it was too late. Behind her, she heard the man's voice, calling out in frustration, "You can't run forever, Emma." She didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. She had to get to the village, to the police station where her father worked. Maybe there, she would find answers, or at least some safety. Buddy barked, and Emma glanced back just in time to see the man gaining on her. His long strides were quick, and he was closing in fast. He wasn't going to let her go that easily. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, but she pushed herself harder, urging Buddy to run faster. She couldn't let him catch her, not when so much was at stake. She heard him shout once more, his voice gaining on her. "Stop, Emma, you don't understand, I'm not your enemy." But Emma couldn't stop. Her father's life was in danger, and she would do whatever it took to protect him. As the village appeared in the distance, she saw the lights of the police station flickering. She was almost there, but then, in an instant, she felt a sharp tug on her shoulder, and she was pulled backward, crashing to the ground with a gasp. Emma hit the ground with a sharp gasp, her body trembling from the sudden shock. The world spun around her for a moment before she scrambled to her feet. Breath shallow and frantic, she glanced back and saw the man standing over her, his grip still firm on her shoulder, a cold determination in his eyes. "Let go of me," Emma screamed, her voice filled with panic. But she fought to keep her composure. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The man didn't reply immediately. Instead, he tightened his grip, pulling her toward him. "You don't have a choice, Emma. It's for your own safety," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Safety?" Emma spat, struggling to free herself. "You're kidnapping me." The man didn't flinch. His cold gaze never wavered. "I'm saving you from yourself. You're too important to be running around unprotected. We need to keep you safe. The group is looking for you." Before Emma could respond, she felt the warmth of Buddy's presence at her side. The dog had seen enough. With a ferocious growl, Buddy lunged at the man. Teeth bared, the man flinched, momentarily distracted, and that was enough. Emma twisted her wrist free from his grasp and sprinted away. But the man was quick to recover. He reached for her again, his fingers brushing against her sleeve. But Buddy was already on him. With a savage growl, the dog snapped at the man's arm, biting down hard. The man let out a grunt of pain, staggering back, but he didn't fall. "Buddy, no," Emma cried, heart pounding, but the dog wasn't listening. Buddy had only one thing on his mind: protect Emma, no matter the cost. The man's eyes burned with fury, but he knew better than to try and fight Buddy head-on. Instead, he pulled a strange-looking device from his belt and pressed it to his mouth. A high-pitched whistle echoed through the trees, sending a chill through Emma's spine. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it wasn't good. "Buddy, get away from him," Emma shouted, but Buddy refused to move. The dog kept his stance, growling, as if daring the man to come closer. But Emma could see the man was prepared for this. He stepped back, watching Buddy with cold eyes, before pulling a syringe from his pocket. Without warning, he lunged at Buddy, injecting the dog in the side. Buddy yelped, shaking his head furiously, but his body began to slow, his growls turning into whimpers. Emma's heart dropped into her stomach as she watched her faithful protector weaken. "No!" Emma screamed, rushing to Buddy's side. She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she tried to comfort him. "Buddy, stay with me, stay with me." The man stepped closer, his eyes cold and calculating. "You don't have a choice now, Emma," he said softly, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Come with me, and no one else has to get hurt." Emma's mind was racing. She couldn't let him take her. She couldn't leave Buddy behind. But as she looked down at the dog, struggling to stay awake, she knew there was only one thing she could do. "Fine," Emma whispered, her voice shaking with fury. "I'll go with you, but only if you leave Buddy alone." The man's lips curled into a cold smile. But Emma could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He wasn't expecting her to give in so easily. "You'll regret this, Emma, but very well. Come with me." As the man turned to lead her away, Buddy let out one last growl, his eyes still fierce, even though his body was failing him. Emma glanced back, her heart breaking. She couldn't believe it had come to this. But she had no choice. She had to survive. Emma's heart pounded as she followed the man through the thick forest. Her thoughts racing. Buddy was still behind them, his weak body stumbling along with every step. But Emma knew he wasn't going to last much longer. The man had injected him with something. And Emma's chest tightened as she felt the weight of the situation. There was no escape. They reached the cabin, small, isolated, and hidden deep within the forest. The man pushed open the door and dragged Emma inside. The air was musty and cold, with shadows cast from a single flickering lamp in the corner. Emma barely registered the surroundings, her mind completely focused on Buddy, who was still outside, still struggling to hold on. "Stay close," the man said in a cold, controlled tone. "Don't try anything." Emma didn't respond. She was consumed with fear and anger. She couldn't let him take her. Not when Buddy was out there, still fighting. She had to protect him. She had to get away. In a flash, Emma remembered the whistle in her pocket. The silver whistle. It had been hanging there ever since that night in the woods. And now it was her only hope. Without a second thought, she pulled it out. She had no idea what it could do. But she didn't care. The man couldn't win. Not now. The man turned just in time to see her lift the whistle to her lips. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his face suddenly tense with fear. Emma didn't answer. She blew into the whistle with everything she had. A high-pitched sound sliced through the air, so sharp and loud that it echoed through the trees, bouncing off the rocks and into the dark night. The man's face went pale, his eyes wide in terror. He stumbled backward, as if the sound itself had physically struck him. No, you can't," he stammered. Emma watched as his eyes darted around the room, his breath ragged. He was terrified, genuinely afraid. Emma felt a surge of triumph. She didn't know what the whistle did, but she knew it had worked. The man was scared. Suddenly, she heard a growl, weak, but familiar. It was Buddy. The man froze. Emma bolted toward the door, throwing it open with all her strength. She looked out into the darkness. And there he was, Buddy. Still standing, still alive. "Buddy," Emma cried. "Come on, boy." Buddy staggered toward her, his legs wobbling, but his eyes were filled with determination. He was hurt, but he wasn't going to stop. Emma could feel the tears pricking her eyes as she knelt down beside him. "Good boy, Buddy, you're okay." She hugged him tightly, relief flooding through her. But she knew they weren't safe yet. The man had fled, but that didn't mean this was over. Whatever had caused the man's fear, whatever the whistle had called, Emma was sure the danger wasn't gone. Her father's involvement, the group, Sheriff Hargrave, they were all still out there. "We'll get through this," Emma whispered to Buddy, her voice resolute. "We'll find the truth, together." And with that, she helped Buddy up, her mind already working on their next move. They weren't safe yet, but they had survived the night, and they would face whatever came next together. Emma's legs were heavy as she trudged down the forest path, her heart still racing from the night's events. Buddy, though still by her side, was limping slightly, his body showing signs of exhaustion. She could feel his steady presence, a reminder that they were in this together. But there was no time to rest, no time to process everything. She needed to get home, to safety, where her father would be able to protect her from whatever danger still lurked. The path ahead seemed endless, every crack of a branch underfoot echoing louder than it should. Her mind raced, questions swirling, fears mounting. She still couldn't understand why that man had targeted her, why he'd gone so far to take her. Was it really just to get to her father? Suddenly, the quiet of the forest was pierced by the shrill sound of a whistle. Emma froze. It was unmistakable, the same sharp, high-pitched call she had heard in the woods before. Her heart skipped a beat as panic swept over her. The whistle. It had to be the same one. It had to be him. She instinctively looked around, her heart racing faster than ever. The man who had tried to take her, was he back? Was he watching her from the shadows? She couldn't risk being caught again. Not when she was so close to home. Buddy growled low, his body stiffening beside her. He could sense it too. Emma's grip tightened on his leash as she quickened her pace, her mind flashing to the warning her father had given her about being careful. The whistle could signal something far more dangerous than she had imagined. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the whistle stopped. A cold sweat ran down Emma's back. Why had he stopped? Was he waiting for something? Without thinking, Emma pulled the whistle from her pocket. She had no idea why, but she felt a strange urge to respond, to call for help. Her father. Maybe the whistle was meant to protect her. She brought it to her lips and blew. The sharp note cut through the air, harsh and clear. For a moment, everything went still. Then, before she could react, she heard the sound of footsteps crashing through the woods. A figure emerged from the trees, moving fast. Emma's pulse spiked, her body tensing in fear. Was it him? But as the figure came closer, Emma's eyes widened in shock. It wasn't the man who had tried to kidnap her. Instead, it was her father, flanked by several deputies, all of them armed and ready. They had come for her. Emma, her father called, his face etched with concern. Are you all right? Where is he? Dad, Emma gasped, rushing toward him. I blew the whistle. I thought I could. Her father quickly wrapped his arms around her, cutting off her words. It's okay, Emma, you did the right thing. We were close, but we had to be sure. He won't get away now. The deputies spread out, searching the area. Emma watched, still panting, as her father's eyes darkened. Where is he? Where did he go? He was close, Emma said, looking back toward the trees. He was watching me, but when I blew the whistle, he ran. Good, her father said, nodding. He's scared now. That whistle is what we needed. Emma looked up at him, her mind reeling. He was trying to use me. To get to you, Dad, but he didn't tell me why. Her father's jaw tightened, and he turned toward the deputies. It's not over yet, he said, his voice low. We'll make sure this ends. Emma, for good. As they made their way back to the village, Emma felt her heart slowly settle. The danger had not been averted yet, but they were one step closer to ending it. The man had run off, but the game was far from over. Whoever he was working for would come for them again. And when they did, Emma would be ready. Emma and Buddy made their way back home, tired but safe. Although she didn't fully understand the danger they had just escaped, Emma knew one thing for sure: they were okay. She glanced down at Buddy, who trotted beside her, still a little shaky but determined. As they approached the house, Emma spotted her father and a few of his colleagues rushing towards them. The worry in his eyes was replaced by relief when he saw Emma and Buddy unharmed. Emma, thank God you're all right, her father said, kneeling down to hug her. Emma held onto him tightly, feeling a sense of security she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Buddy stood beside them, watching carefully. Emma didn't know what had really happened or why, but she felt safe. The adults would take care of the rest. For now, they were home.